So this is while this like I'm gonna try and do something new. This isn't like this is only because the only reason why I'm doing this now is because I'm not gonna get new books until the next time I go. This this time I'm just gonna be returning the books. So you know. But what I might try and do now for my reading recommendations in Library Hall is do it in two separate videos, not all in one. And the reason for why that is because number one, I never have to be like, this is what I am going to read, and this is what I have read. Obviously, like if you watch the video, you'll know that the ones that I'm reviewing, I don't show the books. I returned them. Um, but what I might do is I might just do like this is gonna be reading recommendations. I can't say that word for whatever reason. Comic reviews. Let's just say that reading recommendations sounds stupid. Honestly, I hate that I've named so many videos that because they got no views whatsoever, and I feel like that was because of what they were named. But this is comic reviews. Library books I've read, comic reviews just in general. Usually it's library books. Honestly, I always forget to do comic reviews of books I've actually read. It's kind of weird. I don't know why that is. But anyways, let's get right into it. The first up aren't comics. First two up are not comics, they're movies. And okay. The first two up, I got a text, so I had to swipe it up. The first two up are movies. Ones I felt completely different about. Willow, I just did not like at all. Like I liked how it started. To be fair, I think it was the first like half hour or so. I was like, this isn't bad, and it's a lot of what I wanted from my for a kids fantasy story. I know it's not gonna be ultra violent, even if it is an '80s movie. Although this came out in '88, so that was after the PG-13. It's 4 years after PG-13 came into play. So they could have rated it PG-13. It could have rated PG-13. So wouldn't have been one of those ones that's like, oh man, it was never PG today. Well, I'd argue it would have been. I don't know. But this one I was kind of about. I didn't like absolutely hate it, but I was glad when it was finally over. It was one of those movies that was only like what 2 hours, and it felt like it was 2.5 hours by the end of it. So not my. I can't say not my cup of tea because I like fantasy, but just not recommend for me. But I did end up really enjoying Princess Mononoke. That was the animation was really good. I don't know if it, but the only downside to Mononoke was I don't know if it was the dubbing or the acting or the dialogue or what. And let's just say all three. But that was the worst part of the movie. Not like worst, it was terrible. But that was like when the movie would kind of grind to a bit of a halt. And maybe it was also because it was 2 hours and 14 minutes, was a bit longer than I'm used to, but not too much. So it wasn't that. But for me, I still liked it, obviously. But I think it was a visual I liked a lot better, and the story I liked a lot better, and the atmosphere. Everything else I liked, besides again like the dialogue and the acting. I don't know what it was, but whenever like they would talk, it was kind of like sometimes it was interesting. Yes, it was, but other times it wasn't. I don't know what it was. I think it was too exposition-y at times. I really don't know. But I still liked it. Do not get me wrong. I would still give Mononoke an 8 out of 10, regardless of how I felt about that one downside. That doesn't really matter to me as much because even then I can't really say like what exactly about it I didn't like. Now going on to the books, the first one is the one I just finished, and that is Lore Olympus. I really enjoyed this book. I got recommended. I always had seen it at my local library, and I never really was interested in it until recently, where I think I was thinking like it was on. I think I finally started to wanted to get it because it was fantasy number one, and two, it was one of the Goodreads top reads, and it didn't look like it was that kind of book, too much at least. Like Heartstopper, yeah, I know it was about gay boys and the gay boy land, but this isn't. This is an actual story. And, if you like Heartstopper, good for you. But for me, it's just gay boys, and obviously it's gonna win every single fucking award ever, because that's what they want. Next up, we've got Vader Down. This is the Star Wars and Darth Vader crossover. Now, it's been a while since I've read both Star Wars and Darth Vader, but I've been reading Darth Vader, and that's the reason why I had to get this, because it collects the issues 13 to 15 of Darth Vader. So I had to read this to know what was going on in Volume 3 when I picked that one up. But Star Wars, it's been a while since I've read it. I did not read the 2 volumes of Star Wars prior to this. And I might just do that, especially because I rewatched the other day. Last night I rewatched A New Hope. So I may just read the comics again for the Jason Aaron run. I had gotten back into Darth Vader because it was by Kieran Gillen, and I was like, yeah, I want to read that one again. I really liked it, so that was why I got back into Darth Vader, and I just want to reread it too. But Star Wars not as much. It was kind of weird because I liked both equally. Although Darth Vader I liked a bit more than Star Wars. But it wasn't like I hated one over. No, it was still. I think for me, I just wanted to read one Star Wars book at one time. I guess I don't really know because I do vaguely remember when I was on Poe Dameron, Darth Vader, and the Han Solo one by Marjorie Liu. I was like, that's too much Star Wars for me. And that was just 3 books. But it was because of how much I just did not like the Charles Soule Poe Dameron run. It was just I did not like that, which is really weird because I really like Charles Soule's writing. Anyways. Next up is All New X-Men, Volume 7, The Utopians. This is the final volume in the Bendis run. And it does have its downsides, but I still like, again, like I said before, I am very, 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 not hesitant, the opposite of hesitant. I am very lax with Brian Michael Bendis' writing. No, lenient with his writing. I've never read something by Bendis that I've absolutely hated. Now, on the flip side, I have not read his Superman. I've not read many of his DC books. And what I've read from his DC work, I've actually liked. Event Leviathan, I liked so much. I got the trade for $1.99. But I do have to kind of read the Superman run beforehand, I believe. They might have my local library. I don't know. But Gmail's Interloans. But, if they don't, they don't. I don't want to buy his Superman, even at $1.99 a pop, which actually some are $2.99 because it's hardcover. And DC thinks that digital hardcover is different than digital softcover, which it's not. So I am so annoyed with DC's pricing. I shouldn't be now because it's $1.99 for like this. If this was from DC, this entire book would be $1.99 digitally because it's their sale. Usually it's $14.99 for DC. So that goes to show how like a discount there that it is. But yeah, I liked it. I like his all new X-Men. The whole Iceman thing is kind of off to me. I kind of feel like there's things that contradict other things. But then I remember the Family Guy cutaway that if anything, Family Guy predicted Iceman coming out. And I'm like, okay, so maybe maybe I can look at the argument for Iceman and then realize, okay, there you go. That kind of makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of a joke, but you know. All right. Next up, we got Night of the Living Deadpool, which is by Cullen Bunn. I read this before, and I wasn't like super in love with it. The only Cullen Bunn book I'm not super in love with was his Deadpool stuff. I liked his Deadpool versus Deadpool. I liked his Deadpool run. Don't get me wrong, I like it. But it's not something where I'm like, oh my god, this is so good, like I am with Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman, which, spoilers, is coming up pretty soon. So this one I did like. It was just kind of, for me, I was like, yeah, it's good, but it's also not the best. But this time I did like it a lot better. Last time was kind of about it. This time I liked it a bit more. I definitely do recommend you read it if you want to see Walking Dead Deadpool. Then we got The Defenders by Brian Michael. Oh, this is I forgot to mention. I'm going to put it in the description. But we're starting out with all the good stuff. And then we'll go into the bad. And there's no ugly this time around. I mean, the bad is the same, you know. I probably shouldn't. I like doing the good, the bad, and the ugly because it sounds a lot better than the good and the bad. But I don't know. Maybe the worst and the best and the worst. That's probably what I'll do. Best and worst of what I've read this week. Something like that. The comics I've read this week. Alright, so Defenders... by Bendis, I did enjoy. This one, I will admit, I was starting to realize just what people do not like about Bendis. I always have, because I've read reviews, and I'm the kind of guy who can, like, if you say, oh, I don't like this book that you really like, I can listen to your criticisms of the book and understand them, but I'll still like said book. You know, it's one of those things. But I'm starting to really understand what people don't like about Bendis to like more of a degree than like I'm starting to not defend him as much. Ironically enough, it's no pun intended. But it was still good, but I feel like there's a lot of Brian Michael Bendis isms in here that I don't like. It was pretty dialogue heavy at times. And I kind of feel like it was just it felt kind of fake at times. There's a kind of a good example of being dialogue heavy. But I still enjoyed it, and I'll still be getting volume 2, if only because that's the final volume in the series. It only went on for 2 volumes. And also, I wish they'd just given us the actual Defenders, not just because, oh, there's a TV show coming out, so they gotta get the Netflix people, Netflix Marvel heroes on the team, so we can pair up Defenders, here's a movie, or here's a TV show. But that's a very minor, very, very minor, criticism. It's a nitpick. And I will admit that Defenders did get me to want to reread the Alias series, and it got me to realize, like, why haven't I read it? Like, it got me to have sort of an epiphany as to why I haven't read it again. Reread it again. It's been a long time. But I think, like, with Preacher, which, spoilers, I did reread, I think, like, with Preacher, I feel like I remembered too much from it that there was no reason for me to go back to reading it, other than, oh, just to read it, you know? Because most of the books I reread, there's 2 reasons for why. One, I forgot a lot of what happened. I want to reread it again because I liked it, or I'm giving it a second chance. I didn't like it, and you'll be seeing one that I gave a second chance to pretty soon here. But now is one. Next up is one that I never thought I'd actually like. I unironically liked the sequel to Gabby Rivera's America. This is America Made in the USA. Written by, I'm going to say this, written by Kalinda Vasquez. The reason why I am, like, being so specific about this is because I do not want anyone to get confused. This is the, doesn't say, this is a 2019, this is the most recent America Chavez book. This is the good version. Gabby Rivera's run is the awful version. If you want a book that's gonna make you hate it's gonna almost make you hate comics, read America by Gabby Rivera. But this is the good version. This is actually a very good book. If I read this first and this was the America everyone hated, I'd be like, okay, you guys are being too harsh. It's not that bad. It's not, by any means, it's not good. I'm just saying, I only reason why this is in my good section is because of how much I hated Gabby Rivera's America Chavez, especially that second volume. But this one is the only, again, it's still a good, I would say if it wasn't for Gabby Rivera's writing, this is the only America Chavez book we had, I think it would still be in my good section. It wouldn't be like a super recommend, but, But if you don't like America Chavez, then I would say pick this one up. Or actually, probably the Young Adventures run. Remember, she wasn't too insufferable about that. And there's the omnibus? No, complete collection, which actually, it does collect it still. There's an omnibus that was super skinny. It was like 400 pages. And a complete collection, which is the same amount, the same stuff in the omnibus. So there's no reason to get the omnibus, honestly. Only if you care about oversized artwork, which I have mentioned time and time again. I don't mind. I would rather pay. Let's say this is a complete collection, and it's the same. Let's say this is Young Avengers complete collection. I would rather spend $40 on this than $75 on a hardcover and just get oversized artwork. I'm not that kind of guy. I read a lot of my comics in floppy form, so to say, oh, I need oversized artwork, double dip, no. I don't have that kind of money. If I'm getting a book, I'm getting it with even a book like that. Like I got a the Green Lantern run, $1.99 a pop, which one was $2, one was $2.99. And I still felt like I was wasting money because I had most of what was collected in the first volume, and some of what was in the second volume. And so that should go to tell you how much I don't like double dipping. So to do that just for oversized artwork, get the same exact book I already had, but it's hardcover, oversized, and more expensive. No, I'm not that kind of guy. But anyways, so yeah, America Chavez I actually did like. I was very surprised. And I don't remember who said it, because I think it was Perch, one of those guys, thinking critical, who had said that it was actually much better than the original. It was like a good reboot. Now, to all 2 of you who actually liked Gabby Rivera's America, which, how? They do change spoilers, they do change the origin. I mean, it's not really a spoiler, they just change the origin, it's not really a spoiler. I didn't say what exactly, they changed. Next up is the Mighty Event Earth's Mightiest Heroes Avengers by Joe Casey, which is a retelling of the Avengers' origins, the early days of the Avengers. I like this book. It started out very mediocre, and I was ready to not give up on it, but I was ready to put it in my bad section, and not get volume 2, because I had volume 2 at my local library, and G-Milks too, as I know I'll be able to get it. I was a train of thought, but it got much better as it went along, and I really enjoyed this book. This is Joe Casey. I wouldn't say at his best. I've not read a whole lot of Joe Casey's writing, but this is kind of like it reminds me of those days that I would go like to my bargain bin section of my local comic shops and find a hidden gem. You know, yeah, you would have like your Ultimates 3 and your March on Ultimatum and your tie into this event that failed, or you're just whatever the hell this book is that came out, like a Contagion. Although I did like Contagion, which is those books that obviously are in a bargain bin for a reason. This would be in there, I would argue. But then I pick up something like this, and I would really enjoy it. I was like, I'm so glad I didn't have to spend so much money on it. Like, I didn't have to spend $24.99, and instead I spent only $10 on this thick ass hardcover. Of course, I got it for free because I'm a local library, but I'm just saying it if it's bargain bin. But I did enjoy this one. I do recommend it. I recommend you find it at a cheaper price, or get the complete collection that has this one and its sequel. It has both 1 and 2 of Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I've yet to read the second version, the sequel, but it's by the same creative team, at least written by the same guy. So I can't imagine it's gonna be any worse. You know, it could be, but I can't imagine. Next up is Sonic. I like it. It's a nice little palate cleanser. Nice little like funny little book to read. You know, it's a fun little book. It's nothing that I'm gonna be like overly involved with. Like, I'm not gonna be super deep into the plot. No, it's just a nice little palate cleanser. Oh, it's Sonic. It's cute. Yeah, cool. Reminds me of the video games I used to play. Awesome. Next book, you know. If you're a Sonic fan, I do recommend you pick it up. But I was never really, I was more of a Mario guy than a Sonic guy, so. For me, I have no, like, real emotional attachment, but I have enough of emotional attachment to like the story, not be like, what the hell is this, you know? But there's a whole reason behind why I finally picked up the IDW Sonic run, is because I thought it would be the Archie comics run, like akin to that, where it was just ridiculous and funny. But it's more it's more story based. It's more grounded in reality, or grounded in Sonic reality. But I've always been like, because there was Sonic Adventure games. I was watching the Only Plays walkthrough of the Let's Play, and they were always like joking about how they didn't know what was going on in the story. So that was kind of like, well, yeah, well, I'll pick that up. How can they make that? You know, how can you make Sonic confusing and weird like that? And that's how. And it doesn't get too weird. Some of it's a little weird, but it's just because it's Sonic, really. Like, if someone who has never read Sonic or never heard of Sonic before picks that up, yeah, you're gonna be weirded out. But if you're used to Sonic, it's not gonna be too different. But I really want to pick up the Archie comics run. Archie comics or IDW, make a compendium of the original Sonic comics like it did for TMNT. Although that went on for like, what, 300 issues? So it's gonna take him a long time. I want to say it was 300, but that equally sounds like enough, but then too much. Maybe it was like 200, I don't know. Anyways, next up is Rat Queens, and this is the final volume in that run, and I liked it. Now, like I had mentioned in yesterday's video when I was going over artwork and how the writing makes a book for me and not the artistry. Artistry, it sounded weird. This one had a different art style in the last few issues, and while it wasn't too distracting for me, well, it was distracting for me. While it wasn't like too bad for me, I would say if you don't like a different kind of art style, you probably shouldn't pick up this book. And you know, I hate to say that because of the fact that, yeah, it is it's very hard for you to explain, because not that I need to talk about spoilers or whatever, so let's go through the artwork first. So it's this kind of, so I'll show you what I liked, because of the first issue or so, I liked that artwork. Like this artwork here. Yeah, it's that artwork here. Yeah. I like this kind of artwork. That was good. But then it went on to a different artist, and I thought it was way too cartoony. This is a perfect example of it. I don't think it's a drug hallucination either. I think that's actually how it's supposed to look. Not too bad. Here's a better example. But still not Rat Queens for me. And it's a different writer, too. It's Ryan Ferrier. And I feel like the one downside I had to the original Rat Queens, like Curtis J. Weeb, is I felt like sometimes the issue ended, the story ended, before the issue ended. So there was a lot of, like, filler at the ending. It was almost like Curtis, like, not that he blew his, to put it in vulgar terms, not that he blew his load too early. No, it was just that he ended it. He didn't realize. Oh, I wrote this story to only fit 20 pages. I got 10 more pages. We're going to put in there now. I feel like Ryan Ferrier, for the most part, I did feel that way in some issues of this book. He was able to do that a lot better. But that's the only downside I had to Curtis J. Weeb's run. And this is a perfect example of how I'm very lenient when it comes to comics in general. Not just Bendis or Brian Azzarello or Cullen Bunn. No, it's just in general. I'm a very, like, lenient comic reader. If you give me an interesting enough story, I'm not going to go delve too deep into the plot or character. And sometimes it will. Sometimes there's books where it's like, oh my god, they really mess up with that character. They really, they really lost the plot here. I have no idea what's going on, and not in a good way. But for the most part, like, if you give me, like, a simple story, I'm like, yeah, it's good. I mean, obviously I'm going to want a little bit more sometimes, but for the most part, like, if you give me a good story, I'm going to be, it's a good story. That's that. But yeah, Rat Queens, I do recommend you pick up the entire run. It wasn't too expensive. I think a lot of the issues were, a lot of the volumes on Amazon were like $10 when the list price was $14.99. So you probably get, and you can get all of, I could be wrong, but I think you can get like all 9 of them for like only a little bit over $100, and it's 9 volumes of, you know, saw how thick that, well, not thick, but you saw how that volume 1 was. Next up is Scales and Scoundrels, and I enjoyed this book. It was a bit, but it's like with Bully Wars. There were times when I was like, oh yeah, this is made for kids, and the artwork is a bit too simplistic for me. I know you're going for a comedic fantasy story, and it's for kids, so you have to make it look all cartoony, but sometimes the artwork was too much for me. I was like, ugh. But it was still good. I still liked it. I still would recommend it, kind of. It's tough for me to recommend a book like this that's made for kids because I don't want anyone thinking that it's like a Pixar levels or anything like that. No, it's, I would say this is very in the line of a DreamWorks TV show. Not the movie, the TV show. Like, you know how you have the movies, like your How You Train Your Dragon, but then you would have a TV show spin-offs that's still, like, it was still good, but they didn't, like, it was still good, and actually, I've actually heard the TV show for Dragons is better than the movies, but, like, the TV shows, you were still good, you still liked it, still, oh, I get to see his characters again, but you were never, like, super into it. That's how I feel about Scales and Scoundrels. It's a TV show based off a movie that doesn't exist, because there's no Scales and Scoundrels movie going on, there's no, like, higher up for Scales and Scoundrels, it's just this. But, you know, it's still, you know, it's a nice little palate cleanser. I would recommend it in that sense, you know, if you just want to read a good fantasy image comic that's not too violent or not too vulgar, because it's rated E for everyone. It's rated G, basically. I would say pick it up. It's not too kiddish. Like, there's not, like, a whole lot of, like, really bad jokes that only kids will find funny, or there's, like, a lot of, like, really loud characters and like that they kind of pander to kids. No, they still make it a good book. But again, it is rated E for everyone, so it's not going to be, like, super violent and vulgar and have everything that someone would like in an image comic, or not an image comic, but it's in comics in general. Next up is Self-Made, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This was, like, really interesting. I would argue it was way more science fiction than fantasy. They do say sci-fi slash fantasy, science fiction slash fantasy on the back of the book when they're saying what genre it is. But I would argue it's more science fiction than fantasy. There are some fantasy elements, especially in the first issue, without giving too much away. But it is more of a science fiction tale, and it is so good, so good. If you don't want to know if you don't want to know what the story is about, I'm gonna put my hand up for spoilers. I'm not gonna say what it's about. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna give it a comparison to it. It reminded me a lot of Avatar meets Assassin's Creed. That's about it. So this one is a really good book. I highly recommend that one. Along with, and this is a book that I reread in like the first time. Alright, sorry, I gotta answer this text because it's kind of important. Come on. Do you guys have this problem when you tap a button on your device? Doesn't have to be your iPad, doesn't have to be your iPhone. It doesn't tap. It's like tap, go, and it's like nope. All right, so next up is Bitterroot. And this is when I reread the first time. I didn't like it as much, and read the second time. I was like, okay, I understand it. This one I can understand, but still, how? How did I not like it? But this one I can kind of understand a bit more than something like Low by Rick Remender or Monstrous by Marjorie Liu. But this is really good. I mean, it's very like, it's a political comic, but it's like, I would argue that it's not too preachy. If you don't like politics in your comics, and like if you don't like politics in your comics, that's even like a tad bit preachy, then probably avoid this book. But it's not like too egregious, you know. It's not like something like you know where the person's going with the tale. Like, I know what that's gonna end up being, but the story is interesting enough to me where I can ignore all the dislikes or all the downsides. And I like this series so much that next time I get a gift card from Amazon and it's not in volumes 2 and 3 aren't available in my local library, I'm getting all 3 volumes of this. And a summer special, I'll get the Kindle because I don't have that. I don't think. Maybe in a second volume, but yeah. And I might wait for the hardcover to come out. But the hardcover is gonna be $60. And as much as I like Bitterroot, $60 is a lot to ask for me to get just one additional issue that is not included anywhere else. Well, in the soft covers at least. I believe it's available digitally. I believe. Yeah, I do recommend Bitterroot. But again, if you don't like cause I feel like some people, because again, it's your mileage may, that's the best way to explain this, to explain what I'm trying to say. Your mileage may vary for how political heavy or preachy heavy that this book is going to get for some of you guys. Next up is Maestros by Steve Skroce, and I, again, enjoyed this book. It was very interesting. It was a little choppy here and there. I wouldn't say it's the best book I've read. No, it's still good. I still recommend it, but it's a bit choppy here and there. I would say I would agree with the 3.6 out of 5. That's the kind of book that this book reminds me of. It kind of reminds me of that kind of book you'd find in your not in your dollar bin, but a bargain bin comic shop would have this in their stock, and probably have a bunch of copies of this. But it would be one that one would pick up and they'd be glad they only had to spend. They were happy that it was at a discount. Now, if you had to pay $16.99 for this book, I wouldn't say it's too much because it's like how thick this is. It's thicker than what you get for a $16.99er. It's 192 pages, same as Monstrous, which it was $9.99, but that's an ongoing. This isn't. This was 7 issues and done. So I would recommend this book, obviously, because it's in the good section. But. And if you had to pay full price, then I wouldn't say it's too bad, but it's kind of one of those books that I would expect to find in a bargain bin. And I would be surprised if it was in a bargain bin. Of course, it's not going to be in my local comic shop's bargain bin, because my local comic shop has very slim pickings in general for trades, I feel. It's usually the most popular books, and then after that, nothing. Which, again, some books I'm on are popular enough, then they have it, but sometimes I'm like, hey, I've never heard of this series. It'd be nice if you guys had it. Well, they didn't. And I don't blame my local comic shop either. Next up is Cowl Volume 2 by Kyle Higgins, and just like the first volume, I really like the series, but it had the same issues. I could not tell the characters apart. Not the way that they were drawn, not the way that they were written, not the way I am, but a bit of a mixture of the former two, of the way they're written and the way I am. Now, this is not to say that's a not to say it's a discount because I didn't really care. I cared more about the story and the characters, like the story, yeah, the story and the characters, and I got lost in the story. And I love this book. This is a very good book. But again, the fact that I can't tell the characters apart, like I can't tell who this guy is right here. I couldn't tell you his name or her name or his name or the name of anyone. I couldn't tell you. That is the one major downside to this book. But it does not hold back my enjoyment at all, because I usually sometimes can't tell the characters. When there's too many characters, sometimes I can't tell them apart. But that's still enjoyable. I still highly recommend this book. It's just out of stock on Amazon, though, which I don't like, because I might buy it myself. Next up is Peter Panzerfaust, Volume 2 by Curtis J. Weeb. And this is much weaker than his Rat Queens. Rat Queens is really good, got me even more into fantasy than I had been before, which is saying something. And this one, it did not pique my interest for war comics. If anything, it signified what I don't, not what I don't like, but it signified what I am so skeptical for when it comes to fantasy books. War comics. I'm still on fantasy. For war comics. But fantasy I really like, so don't get me wrong, I'm trying to say war. For war comics, I was like, and this one didn't really boost my spirits up at all. It was still good, I still would recommend it, kind of, but it was... I never got, for whatever reason, that first issue of Peter Panzerfaust, I thought was its best so far. Like, a 9 out of 10, almost 9.5 out of 10 for issue 1. And then after that, it never quite got to that excitement I had for issue 1. I don't know why. Maybe because it was a bit faster paced than it was as it went along. But I don't mind a slower paced comic. Next up, we got Wonder Woman by Brian Azzarello, Volume 1. And this is still as good as I remember it, if not better. It's just such a damn good run. Pick this up if you haven't already. Now, in the mail, we got Batgirl Volume 4 by Gail Simone. And like I said last time, I will never understand when people don't like this run. Yeah, so what? They retconned the character. It's New 52. It's New 52. A reboot of the series. Who cares? Maybe they want to try something new. Yeah, okay. Maybe I would argue that. I'll give you this. I have not read enough of Oracle to fall in love with the Oracle version of Batgirl. But on the same side, like, you have those Oracle comics, like those ones way back in the day. I can't imagine that even if you read all the Oracle issues, that you remember exactly what happened in each and every issue. Like, there are books I've read. There are books I've read just last week that I forgot a lot of what happened in them, and that's a lot of it. That is me, because I swear to God, I have a version of not version, but I have some sort of short-term memory loss, like not like severe or anything like that, but like some sort of it, some form of it, yeah, some form. Because there's books I read yesterday that I don't remember a whole lot of what happened in them. Of course, I remember enough so I can read issue 2 and remember what happened in issue 1. But there's some things I'm like, wait, what happened again? I just kind of have to refresh my memory, more so than I would think I'd have to. And no, it's not because I read so many comics, it's just because the way my brain works. But again, this, I like Gail Simone's Batgirl. Sue me. But I will give you this. After she leaves Batgirl, I have not read anything I've liked for Batgirl. That's post Gail Simone New 52. The closest I came to it was Batgirl and Birds of Prey, but even that was just still kind of meh. But like, it was like a 6 out of 10 for me for the Birds of Prey. Like, just good, passable, Now we got Transmetropolitan Volume 10 one more time. And this is by Warren Ellis. And I love this series. When this series gets good, it's a page turner. It's that book you don't want to put down. It's that book that when you see, when you're reading it now, I have this in piles. I'll be like Preacher, then then X-Men, then Batgirl, then Spider-Man, then Transmetropolitan. And when this came up, I was like, let's go. I cannot wait to read this again. that kind of thing. Because this was a reread, and if anything, I liked it better the second time around than the first time, which again is saying a lot. This is my highest recommendation, along with Preacher Book 6. These are the highlights of Vertigo. Not just Vertigo DC, not just comics, but literature in general, media in general. It's like I count comics as media. This is what comics were made for. This is why. This is a perfect example of give this to your friend who says comics are just for kids and they don't want to read comics. They're just for kids. Give them this book. Give me these two series because they'll shut up forever and they'll finally hopefully be a comic fan. The one downside to this is I did not read these. There was the I Hate It Here and the Filth of the City specials because it was just text. And I was like, That was the one downside to me was his articles. It was very humorous. I will give it that. It was humorous. It was a lot better than anyone else would have written it. But it's still, I'm not a big article reader. Not really. I'm the kind of guy who's like, okay, what's the article? All right, let's flip to it. Wait, I want to read it. Like, say it says it's like top 10 best Spider-Man moments. So let's go. Let's go. Okay, number 10 is this. Number 9 is that. The only exception was the Image Comics Fantasy Guide when I wanted to read more about what the book was about. That was about it. And that was quick, too. It was like a paragraph. If that. Then we got Hellblazer. And this is my favorite volume of Hellblazer so far. This is a reread, but I didn't remember before I reread this, I could not tell you my favorite volume of Hellblazer. I would just say, the Garth Ennis run as a whole. I would not be able to tell you exactly which volume did it for me. And this is a volume that does it for me. This is volume 7. Tainted Love. And don't get me wrong, I did like it. So now moving on to the bad. So we are 36 minutes in. So 36, I'll say 37 minutes in. So let's wait till it goes 37 minutes. Okay. Now on to the bad. Starting with Ultimate Thor. I liked some of it, but it didn't give me what I wanted, and that's not what did it for me. It was just kind of just Jonathan Hickman's writing. I think this kind of reminded me of a what do they call it? But it's like they're phoning it in. It's a paycheck book. This is a prime example of a paycheck book. It comes from a critically acclaimed writer by Jonathan Hickman, who has done almost no wrong for me. But this is a paycheck book. I could really tell that it was. Now, it's really weird because Ultimate Thor was kind of like a frat boy kind of guy at least in the Warren Ellis Ultimate Galactus trilogy storylines. I kind of like that, and it's so bad that it was good. Like, it was kind of like, oh my god, this is the Thor that they're gonna get in the Ultimate Universe. Jesus Christ! What if that was someone's introduction to Thor, and they watch the movies and they're like, oh, what? That's the actual Thor? Like this. But this did not give me what I wanted. Some of it was good. Like, it wasn't all bad. I would say it was like a kind of like a 5 out of 10 kind of book, but still not a pick of mine. It's only 4 issues, so if you're really interested in it, then go ahead, but don't expect anything good at all. Next up is Invisible Kingdom. I'm sorry, New Recondition, but I hated this book. Absolutely despised this book. This reminded me of what people do not like in sci-fi comics. That's how much I hated this book. This is the reason for why I'm so skeptical to get sci-fi comics, and why I was so skeptical to get into sci-fi in general, because of books like this. Of course, East of West I loved in sci-fi, and Star Wars books I love. That's sci-fi. I do like sci-fi as a genre. But this reminded me of why. So, I had 3 sets of books. One was more fantasy, which I got. This is for the books I want for Christmas. So, one set was fantasy, more fantasy-based. The second was more sci-fi based, and the third was just author based. And I was so glad I decided to pick fantasy over sci-fi, because this, I would have been like, why did I pick that? Why didn't I pick fantasy? Oh man. I'm so glad I picked that, because I've been so mad I picked the sci-fi books because of this. Exclusively. Because of that. Next one up, and again, this is one I gotta say, I am sorry, but I did not like this book, and that is Blue and Green by Ram V. Now, I will admit, this is split up into 3 chapters. In the 3rd chapter, I was like, should I reread this and give it a second chance already? So I would say this is more of a 5.5 out of 10. Closer to a 6 than a 5, but still a 5 out of 10 for me. Which is kind of crazy for me because everyone else seems to like this book. So with that being said, I would say read this book, form your own opinion, but as for me, I didn't like it. I thought it was just too weird and too complex, and it kind of reminded me of all the downsides I've had with Sandman since day one. Then we got Isola, and had it not been for how fast paced the book is, I would have hated this book. As of right now, as of the book in general, I would say it's just bad, not too great. Again, form your own opinion, but it doesn't have the best reviews. But it's still, like, again, like I'm in the back of this book and I'm like, yeah, I guess that makes sense, but not really. I'm in the back of it, I'm like, that happened? Okay. I mean, I remember some of it, because I remember, so the plot synopsis that I give you is that the queen gets turned into this animal right here that you see, and they gotta get her back to the kingdom. But reading the back of it, I was like, yeah, okay. But some of it, I'm like, really, that happened? Alright. Which is not good for you. It's not good to say that, because that means that not just I wasn't paying attention. I was paying attention, but that it was so like that's not good. You can't say they said that I'm reading the back of the book what the plot's about, and most of it I'm like, that happened. Now on to the final book in general, and that is in general, and that is Wonder Woman. Volume 1, Origins by Renee Delguy-Liz. This one was pretty bad. This one is, if you want a Silver Age revamp of, well, it's more Golden Age, but Golden Silver Age, might be more of Silver Age. But that's only because I've read more Silver Age than Golden Age. But if you want a dated Wonder Woman story that's going to remind you of it, and it is a celebration, I will give you that. It's a celebration of the Golden and Silver Age of Wonder Woman. But for me, it was just everything I didn't like with that about that era of comics all rolled into one. It's just really boring, really almost borderline uninspired. Wonder Woman tale. I got better as it went along, but I didn't like it. I would say it was a 3 out of 10 for me, and it's only because it got better. So it'd be 1 out of 10 before it got better for me. But every time this book came up, I was like, ugh. It took me so long to read each issue too, because it was 36 pages and there was so much dialogue. Sometimes they would have more quieter panels where there wasn't as much dialogue, and they have like a whole entire page that was just artwork, splash panels pages. But for the most part, it was just too dialogue heavy, and it got more interesting as it went along. And I will give you this: this book caused me to have it caused me to like the character of Etta Candy more than I ever have. But that's only because I don't think she was she featured in the Bright as the Rebel run? She probably was, I just forget. But it got me to have more of an appreciation for Etta Candy's for Etta Candy in general. That's Wonder Woman's friend in the comics. But that's about it. A bunch of books, 2 movies. I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. If all goes well, I'll see you tomorrow for my Newbury Comics comic call. Knock on wood, I hope. And now we are on at 43 minutes in, so I will let you guys go. 43 minutes of me just talking about books. That's crazy.